Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today, so let's start off talking about Extreme Rules last night and that main event for the Universal Championship. An interesting one to say the least. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the match, and I think everyone would say they enjoyed the match because Roman Reigns, Finn Balor, of course they're going to have a good match, and they did. They had a very good match, but the finish to it was just bizarre, just absolutely bizarre, and we'll get into it. So the unusual ending to last night's Extreme Rules main event has been met with quite a lot of criticism from fans on social media and inside the arena last night in Columbus, Ohio. Now, towards the closing stages of the match, the Demon Finn Balor dispatched both the Usos, only to be speared through the ringside barricade by WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns. Suddenly, the lights went red. Yes, Bray Wyatt, the Fiend, may be gone from WWE, but the red light of doom still exists. So the lights went red, and an unconscious Finn Balor miraculously got back to his feet while reacting to the heartbeats from his entrance music. Now, with the red lights turned on, Finn Balor blasted Roman Reigns with a chair and sent the Tribal Chief through a table with a dropkick. Just moments later, Balor prepared to launch for the coup de grace from the top rope, but fell to the mat after the top turnbuckle of the entire ring collapsed abruptly. Finn Balor then sold a knee injury and struggled to get back to his feet, giving Reigns enough time to hit a spear and retain his Universal Championship. Now, a lot of people have been, as to be expected, flooding social media with negative messages about the finish. The finish was odd. The finish was absolutely very, very odd, and I don't really know what to make of it, to be honest with you. I mean, it happened last night. We're several hours removed from it at this point, and I'm still in a sense of shock, to be honest with you. I'm still in a sense of shock. Like, you can see it right there. The only way that finish can make sense is if you're trying to suggest that somebody did that on purpose to Finn Balor. Now, it wouldn't be Roman Reigns, that wouldn't be the Usos, that wouldn't be anyone. Put it this way, if the Fiend was still in WWE, I would go, right, it's going to be the Fiend versus the Demon King, or it's going to be the Fiend versus Finn Balor, because it was like, it's WWE's foray once again into going into supernatural territories. It's when WWE thinks, oh, we're being really entertainment-centric, we're being very entertainment-focused, and we're being different, but it felt odd, but I don't see who would do that. Who would do that? Who would do that? So if there's nobody realistically on the roster that would do that or set Finn Balor up like that, would have the supernatural powers to make the top rope snap, then you're just saying that the top rope just happened to snap on by accident, and that allowed Roman Reigns to win. It was all very, very bizarre. And once again, it's this case of WWE when they try and be, like supernatural, or they try and be, I don't know, Hollywood or entertainment or anything like that, whether it is, or they try and just be clever, it never works. Seth Rollins was just on the Broken Skull sessions with Steve Austin, and he was saying, like, after that Hell in a Cell match, that infamous Hell in a Cell match that he had with The Fiend in 2019, that afterwards he came backstage and he wanted to strangle Vince McMahon, because he's like, that creative just sucks, and the writers or whoever came up with the finisher of that match was trying to be like the cleverest person in the room, but at the same time, the person who always tries to be the cleverest person in the room is in reality the dumbest person in the room, because no one ever thinks that's clever, or you're trying too hard, or you're flying in the face of, well, there's just no logic. And that's what it felt like last night. It was just a really illogical finish. And again, the only way I think they can get away with it now is if they try and retrospectively paint logic into it, and that someone set Finn Balor up. But I think I'm giving that too much credit, because I don't think they will. I think they'll just say, well, fortunately for Roman Reigns, it went his way and the top rope snapped. I don't know. It was just bizarre. Now, I know some people have said, well, it's creative and all that kind of stuff, and it protects Finn Balor, but does it? I don't know. I really don't know. It was just a strange finish. Again, the only way I think they can get around it or away with it is if it's leading to something else or someone else for Finn Balor to face off against. But I don't know who that would be. I really don't. It's not going to be The Undertaker. At least I hope not. It's not going to be Kane. I hope not. We did see Kane back recently, but I don't know. That's why it's bizarre, because I just don't see the logic behind it. The top rope just happened to snap. Why? Why? And again, I get that it's a supernatural character, the Demon King and all that kind of stuff, but at the moment, like, he's unconscious, but the lights go red and suddenly the heart beats, and he got, like, shocked back to life when he got back up. I was just rolling my eyes at it, and I was just like, oh. Because, and again, it's not for me. It's not for me, and I totally get it, because I will see some people saying, I've said the same thing about Alexa Bliss and Lily and all that kind of stuff, that isn't for me. That is for the kids, and the kids might watch that and go, that's amazing. I've never seen anything like that before. But it's just not for me, and I just found it very, very odd. But Roman Reigns, as expected, retains the Universal Championship. He's still the Universal Champion. He'll be facing Brock Lesnar at Crown Jewel next month, and certainly is going to be an interesting one. Speaking of Extreme Rules last night, we saw Sasha Banks return, which if you watched the preview that I did on the channel, I called, but I'm not like I'm Nostradamus or anything like that, because I think most people called that happening. WWE SmackDown Women's Champion Becky Lynch faced Bianca Belair last night at Extreme Rules. Now, after a tough battle, Belair looks to finish the champ off with a KOD, but Sasha Banks made her return and attacked Belair. This meant, of course, that Lynch retained her title, but she didn't escape Banks when she was dropped by the boss after the match. Banks got a few more shots on Belair before making her way to the stage. So this was what was expected. As I mentioned in the preview that I did yesterday, I thought that Banks would come back. And it was just a case of how they did it. Was Banks going to cost Belair the title? Was she going to go to like a double DQ? How are they going to do it? But they did it the way that they did it last night. And it's an interesting one going forward, because it would imply that this is going to be a triple threat match going forward. And when would they do that? Do they do that at Crown Jewel? I mean, it would be a massive moment. I mean, if WWE had some balls, if they had some moxie about them, they would go, you know what? We want to prove that, you know, we obviously take women's wrestling seriously, but we do whether we're in Saudi Arabia or not. We don't care about your antiquated views on women not wrestling over here. What we're going to do is not only have the Queen of the Ring tournament finals in Saudi Arabia, what we're also going to have is we're going to have the main event of the show be Sasha Banks, Becky Lynch, Bianca Belair. Now, I don't know if that probably will be the case. I think Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar will be the main event of Crown Jewel, but if WWE had some balls, that's what they would do. But I don't think they'll go with that. Whether or not that match does take place at Crown Jewel will remain to be seen. It could just as easily take place at Survivor Series as well. To be honest with you, that whole Raw versus SmackDown deal that they do for Survivor Series, I'm just a bit over. I'd rather it just be Survivor Series and you have the 5-on-5 traditional Survivor Series tag match. It shouldn't just... I hate the brand warfare thing. I think it's overdone. So it's just a case of now is when do you do this triple threat match? Because that's what they're building to. They're building to this triple threat match. Sasha Banks, I guess, is still a heel because she primarily attacked Bianca Belair, or she certainly attacked her first, which is good. My concern with Banks coming back is that she would be transitioned into a babyface, considering that Becky Lynch is obviously a heel now and she's the champion, but that's not the case either. So the SmackDown division, SmackDown Women's division, certainly gets stronger. I guess the big talking point would be, are all three stars, are they going to remain on SmackDown going forward? We could just as easily see, not Becky Lynch, she'll probably stay on SmackDown, but certainly Sasha Banks or Bianca Belair could easily move to Monday Night Raw. Lord knows the Raw Women's division needs it. Absolutely needs shaking up. The Raw division, Raw roster in general does need shaking up. So we could see a situation whereby either Banks or Belair does actually get drafted to Monday Night Raw, which would then imply that they are going to do this triple threat match at Crown Jewel, because in a couple of months' time they're not going to be able to do it because all three female stars aren't going to be on the same roster at the same time. So that could certainly be an interesting situation. But Banks versus Belair versus Lynch probably looks to be happening. It's just a case of when. But it's a massive match, huge women's match that they have on their hands right now, absolutely. Speaking of Becky Lynch, we have an update when it comes to the general feeling regarding her WWE return. Now, of course, Becky Lynch returned to WWE at SummerSlam this year after being absent for over a year after giving birth to her first child. Now, she defeated Bianca Belair for the SmackDown Women's Championship in her return match, and the two have been in a program ever since. And WWE officials are reportedly happy with Lynch's return and feud with the EST of WWE. Now, the man defeated Belair in just 26 seconds at SummerSlam. The two women clashed once again at Extreme Rules, with Lynch being able to retain the SmackDown Women's Championship. Fightful Select, though, has stated that WWE officials backstage are pleased with Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair's program on SmackDown. Lynch has impressed the top brass since her return to WWE. So there you go. There you go. That's the situation. WWE are very happy with it. And I think, the reason they're happy with it will probably be because, and I spoke about this yesterday during the preview as well, the reason that WWE are happy with the Becky Lynch program right now is that fans are starting to boo her. You saw it Friday on SmackDown. Fans are booing her, and then she still gets a reaction, and she always will. It's the same as Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns comes out, he still gets a big reaction, but primarily he gets boos, and I think that's going to be the case with Becky Lynch going forward. But I would argue that the reason they're booing Becky Lynch is because the version of Becky Lynch that they're seeing isn't actually the version they want to see. I think that's why they're booing her. But look, they're happy with it. WWE are happy with it. They're happy. I think they're just, in general, they're just happy to have Becky Lynch back. That's the reality, isn't it? They're just happy that Becky Lynch is back on their programming, because having Becky Lynch back on their programming is a merch seller, is a ratings drawer, and it means a high-quality product, and it means they can try and keep either Fox, where I think she'll be primarily going forward, certainly wherever Seth Rollins is as well, keeps them happy by having a major star on the show. So they're certainly very happy with Becky Lynch returning, and I suppose why wouldn't they be? Let's talk about Extreme Rules once again last night. Charlotte Flair retained the Raw Women's Championship. To be honest, thank God she did, because I did think going into that there was a real chance Alexa Bliss could win, and I thought, here we go. We're going to have another short Charlotte Flair Raw Women's Championship reign. I mean, she's had 2 in the last couple of months, because she's got to get those title reigns up, brother. Got to have her into double digits. Got to have her... She's going to be in triple digits by the end of her career. I'm not exaggerating either. It's ridiculous. But Raw Women's Champion Charlotte Flair not only retained the Raw Women's Championship last night, but she brutally ripped apart and tore apart Lily after defeating Alexa Bliss at the Extreme Rules pay-per-view. Now, in a backstage interview after the event, Flair explained her actions. When asked if she really saw the need to destroy Lily after her victory, Charlotte Flair said, quote, "You see, that's the problem. You're encouraging Alexa by asking about Lily. I want to know how Alexa feels after she failed to win the Raw Women's Championship. That's the problem. I don't want to talk about Lily." Charlotte then proceeded to give props to Bliss after the match they had. She said, quote, "The Alexa I faced tonight was the old Alexa. It was the Alexa I saw when she had the Raw Women's Championship multiple times. Tonight she fought me and faced me. Yes, I'm still the queen, but that's the Lexi we all want to see. I don't want to hear about Lily." She said ripping up Lily was a wake-up call to remind her she's still the champion at heart. Now, it was a really weird match. So she wins the match, she rips up Lily, and then I guess Alexa Bliss was meant to be sort of going crazy, and she was meant to start foaming at the mouth because she'd put one of those, what they call it, Alka-Seltzers? She was meant to put one of those tablets in her mouth, and it didn't fizz up. That was the problem. It didn't fizz up, so she just had a tablet in her mouth. But you would think, and I think this is probably the direction they are going with this now, is that I think this is all to bring the previous version of Alexa Bliss back. That's what it feels like, doesn't it? Charlotte Flair wants to bring back the old Alexa Bliss. I want to face the old Alexa Bliss. I want to see the Alexa Bliss that was holding the Raw Women's Championship. I don't want to talk about Lily. I don't want to talk about Alexa's Playground, this and that. It does feel like this is maybe the beginning of the end of really the Fiend character, right? Or the Firefly Funhouse gimmick. It feels like the beginning of the end, because at the end of this storyline, we will see the old version or a different version of Alexa Bliss return. The only thing I will say about that is, for better or for worse, I mean, again, the Lily stuff isn't for me. I don't like it, and it is very hokey, but it's over, and you can't argue with that. You can't argue with the crowd. The crowd love it. The crowd love it. The crowd love the doll. Obviously, the doll sells very well. The crowd loves Alexa Bliss, and it just would be so typical WWE, I guess, in that finally, when stuff is actually starting to work, maybe not in terms of critically, but in terms of the audience reaction and merchandise, that's when they start to kill it. And that's when they start to move on to something else. But I think the old version of Alexa Bliss will return eventually, and I think maybe this is the feud that they do it, and then once the old version of Alexa Bliss comes back, that's when she wins the Raw Women's Championship, maybe. But that's what it feels like. They keep stressing, don't they? I want to see the old version of Alexa Bliss. I want to see the old version of Lexi. I want to see the goddess. I want to see this. I want to see that. So I think that's maybe the end goal for this one. When they get there or how they get there, time will only tell. But I think it's going to be in this feud. Tonight, we have another WWE Championship match on Monday Night Raw, because during last night's Extreme Rules pay-per-view, Bobby Lashley called out WWE Champion Big E. Lashley didn't appreciate how Big E cashed in on him after his match against Randy Orton when he dinged up his knee after the match. Lashley ended up calling the champion a chicken shit during his promo and wanted Big E one-on-one for the title at tonight's edition of Monday Night Raw. Later on in the event, Big E said he didn't hide behind anyone and he accepted Lashley's challenge. Michael Cole then announced that the match would be opening Monday Night Raw. So that's why they didn't do the match last night. Instead, they had that six-man, didn't they, last night and all that kind of stuff. That's why they didn't have the WWE title match. A lot of people were saying, why didn't they have that title match at Extreme Rules? Extreme Rules did feel like an afterthought. It did. And I think it felt like an afterthought because, in reality, that's not the priority for WWE right now. The priority in terms of, what they're looking towards Crown Jewel. They're looking to make sure that the SmackDown ratings remain strong, and they are at the moment, but certainly one of the big priorities is we got to keep Monday Night Raw. We've got to keep those ratings going up. And last week, not a lot of people expected them to beat AEW Dynamite in the demo. They did. The ratings obviously went up with Roman Reigns being on the show, and they announced a big match, a big six-man tag team match with the Bloodline and the New Day, and that worked, and they had a big main event last week as well, and they want to make sure that they do the same. So they're doing the same tonight for Monday Night Raw, and again, I'm not going to criticize them for that. I know some people will. It's hot shot this and all this kind of stuff. They're valid criticisms, but I'm not going to criticize WWE for trying to put on a good show or trying to give us a show that people want to watch. They haven't done that for ages. So the fact that they're trying to do that, I'll give them credit for it. Now, one thing I will say is you can't keep doing WWE Championship matches every single week because eventually that will wear off. There does have to be a bit of substance to this, and it is hot-shotting, but look, I'll give them credit. They're trying to produce a show that people want to tune in to watch. We don't say that about Monday Night Raw that often. We don't say that about WWE that often. The pay-per-view last night was a pay-per-view that a lot of people were going, if I miss it, it doesn't matter. When it comes to advertising WWE Championship matches and saying, look, it's going to start tomorrow's edition of Raw, it's the same thing they did last week with the six-man tag team match. They're saying, tune in. The first thing you're going to see next week, or on this episode, is that big six-man tag team match. That's a big match. I'm all for them advertising big stuff for the shows and making the shows worth watching. Because Lord knows we've had to watch and sit through Monday Night Raws for years at this point that haven't been worth watching, and just they don't hook you in. Or so many times it would be like an hour and a half before Raw and I'd be like, I don't know what's going to be on the show tonight, and I don't care because I know it's going to be bad. At least the last few weeks, whether it's Big E said he's going to cash in tonight, or Roman Reigns is going to be there tonight, or we've got a WWE title match to kick off the show tonight. That makes the show worth watching, at least. And that's the very minimum that they should be doing, but I'll give them credit for trying. Now, how long this lasts, time will tell. But I'll give them credit for trying. I'm not going to mock them for that. Finally, we have a bit of an update when it comes to Riddick Moss, his return to WWE television. This week on SmackDown, or last week now on SmackDown, Riddick Moss made his return to WWE television by helping Happy Corbin attack Kevin Owens. Now, his latest match was a pre-SmackDown match against Odyssey Jones on September 17. His last match before that was on October 1st, 2020, nearly a year ago on Main Event, where he defeated Eric of the Viking Raiders. Now, according to Fightful Select, Moss never appeared after the draft last year, and there's another draft next week. WWE felt there was no harm in him starting a team with Corbin. Now, it was noted in the report that Moss actually wrestled a while last year with an ACL injury. A WWE official reportedly said they were, quote, shocked and impressed due to the nature of the injury. Now, he was called up to the main roster in January 2020, and if you recall, he was in line for a really big push on Monday Night Raw because there was an episode of Raw. This was the episode after Super Showdown, and Ricochet had just worked with Brock Lesnar. I say worked, he just lost to Brock Lesnar in 25 seconds or 10 seconds, whatever it was. But he was still featured on the show. He'd been working with Brock Lesnar and I think Randy Orton and all that kind of stuff. So he was a player at the time on the show. And Riddick Moss just ate him up, just battered him, absolutely destroyed him for the 24/7 championship. And at the time, they said WWE has big plans for him. And I think the pandemic changed that. He had, a family member. He had to take some time away from WWE. But they rate this guy, and they have big plans for him. And it looks like those plans are going to continue going forward. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these WWE news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved with the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, gut the rankings, and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or having come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.